Hey everybody, welcome to this audio video edition of the cartoon Flashback. Haven't done this in some time. And you can see the title down below. I am here to talk about one of my favorite Transformers shows, and that is Beast Wars. Later on, which later went on to be known as Beast Machines. Now, the history of Beast Wars is it's actually all different kinds of Beast Wars out there. See, here in America and in Canada, if not worldwide, the Beast Wars that we know is the CGI cartoon that evolved into Beast Machines on Fox Kids. Now, however, in Japan, there's several other Beast Wars. There's Beast Wars, Beast Machines, or Beast Wars Neo, Beast Wars 2, things like that. So they kind of continue it on in anime style. Here, we just have it two different ways. See, apparently, from what I understand, I guess the anime is supposed to take place between Beast Wars and Beast Machines. I could be wrong, and if anybody wants to correct me on that, be my guest. But that's apparently when it's supposed to take place. Now, Beast Wars, to me, when I first heard about it coming out, I was, first being a longtime Transformers fan, as you probably all know, I was excited. I was happy that we're getting another Transformers show. And, being a fan, I thought I'd check it out. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't be. Because, one, it was CGI. It was done by the same people that had worked on Reboot. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to see if it's good. See if it is as good as Reboot was. Reboot being one of the first CGI cartoons. But I thought, I'll see how good this is. And it turned out to be a lot better than I thought. It turned out to really exceed any expectations that the creators and Hasbro had for it. It really exceeded it. And what was unique about Beast Wars, it's got a unique history because it had, I think, different scenarios or something like that, different storylines going around with it from the writers. And I had to drink some coffee there, and like I said, it had different scenarios depending on who the writers were and everything. But they finally settled on a story that I thought was very unique and intriguing. Basically, you have these descendants of the Autobots and the Decepticons, known as the Maximals and the Predacons. So, and Predacons, of course, you might recognize as the name of the Combiner Decepticons from G1. So, anyway, the Maximals and the Predacons, like I said, descendants of the Autobots and the Decepticons. So what happens, almost similar to More Than Meets the Eye pilot, if you will, in G1, they basically end up crash landing on Earth, although we don't know it's Earth until later on. And they do this by going through what is a trans-space warp, trans-space warp or something like that. And they end up on prehistoric Earth, even though, like I said, at times, they don't know it's Earth. They don't know that yet. And the first season was sort of like an introductory season to let us know who the characters were, what the agendas and objectives were. And one of the main things that kept it interesting as well, and this even carried on to the second season, was they also had a mission. And that mission was to salvage as many stasis pods as they could. Because you see what the Maximals did before they crash land was they launched a lot of the stasis pods of unevolved or undeveloped Maximal protoforms. And what happened is basically what they were hoping was two things. One, they would self-destruct, so whatever protoform was in there wouldn't suffer or whatever, or they would crash land on Earth or crash land somewhere, or where they were, or somewhere, to where they can, at least if it's where they are, they can get to it. But that's where the interesting thing about the first season and going into the third season it was about, or going into the second season was about. Basically, it was like a race to see who would get the stasis pod, because whoever got to the stasis pod first would be able to activate it and program it to whoever it's supposed to be. Now, the interesting thing about this was if the Predacons got to the stasis pod first, they could reprogram it and reimagine it or whatever, into a Predacon. They could. They could take the maximal protoform and they could reconfigure it. They can reconfigure it into a Predacon. They could reprogram and reconfigure it into a Predacon. And if the Maximals got to them, they were able to program it and activate it to be who they are. And there were several times that the Predacons got the stasis pod, and there were several times that the Autobots did. The first, the second season, I think it's the two most notable ones were Waspinator. Well, not Waspinator, but were Black Arachnia and Inferno were the two most notable ones of the first season, I believe, and into the second season. Rampage, of course, being another one as well. I think so. And the Autobots, well, they ended up getting several as well. They ended up getting Air Razor, Silverbolt, Tigerhawk. Those were some of the most notable ones. Now, what was interesting about this, though, is, again, like I said, we did not know this was Earth, this was prehistoric Earth, until later on. We didn't know that. We didn't know this was prehistoric Earth until later on, which was around the end of the first season. And after that is when things really started to pick up. Now, one of the interesting things about the first season, though, is we had a defector in the series. You see, the character known as Dinobot was kind of like a Starscream at first. Was kind of like what Starscream was. He wanted to take over, wanted to be leader, and all that. So when he couldn't do that, he got kicked out of the Predacons. He tried the same thing on the Maximals, but instead of, let's say, scrapping him, the Maximals said, hey, look, we see that you're different than any other Predacon. You have honor. You live by a code of honor. So if you want to join us, that's fine, but you can't be the leader. So Dinobot spent the first season, a little bit of the second season, trying to earn the trust of the Maximals and show that he has, that he is worthy of being, a Maximal. They could trust him. He's got a code of honor. And what was unique about this as well is you did have death. You did have characters die in the show. I'm not lying. You did have characters die in the show. One of the first characters I think that died was Pterosaur. Pterosaur, to me, when I first saw him, represented the Predacon version of Starscream. Because here you had a character that basically had Starscream's mentality almost. And I think, in a sense, wanted to take over, wanted to usurp the Predacon version of Megatron. So, to me, I really like that. To me, that's what that character represented, was that show's version of Starscream. And just like Starscream, he ends up getting killed off. And there were other deaths as well. Throughout the series, especially towards the end. Now, what was funny about this, again, though, is they didn't know it was prehistoric Earth until the end of the series. Or not the end of the series, but until the end of the first season. Now, I'm not sure if this took place in the first season or in the second season, but the way you would confirm that this took place after G1, this was a continuation of some sort. This was basically a continuation of the G1 franchise in some ways. The way you knew this was a continuation, and it was connected to G1, it was connected to G1, was the fact that there was an episode which featured Starscream's ghost again, his spark. And just like in the G1 cartoons of the third season, Starscream used the body of Waspinator to host as his Spark's host. So that to me was really, really unique because again, for anybody that was thinking, anybody that probably heard of the series and thinking, nah, it doesn't have no connection to G1, it doesn't have no connection to the original series, no way. As soon as that episode came around, you got a good idea that it was. And then of course there were other ways of kind of showing you that it was connected to G1. Hold on a second. Wrong number. Sorry about that, folks. Somebody calling again, wrong number. But anyway, what made this show so unique and kind of showed you it was a connection was that kind of a show. But also, I think it was in the first season as well, towards the end. And I think even in the beginning of the second season, that you also had an idea that this was kind of connected to G1. Was, I guess there was this, I think it was at the end of the first season into the second season, that you had to connect, that you had, I guess, this planet, the spirit of the planet or something, I'm not really sure, had something to do with the transmetal situation in the second season. It had something to do with that. And what it had to do with was the fact that, and what it had to do, and what connection this has was the spirit, whatever these things would, I guess, representing the transmetal, situation in the second season, is they took the form, is they basically read Primal's mind, and they took the form of the one thing that came right out of his mind. Well, the first thing they saw, and that was the head of Unicron. So if that didn't tell you, along with the episode where Starscream's ghost arrived, that there was a connection and that this was a continuation in some ways, if you will, if not straightforward, of G1, then I don't know what is. And to even confirm that even more, as we got towards the end of the second season, that's when things really started getting interesting, because that's when they discovered the Ark, and that's when you saw the Autobots and Decepticons for the first time in CGI format. And I like how that's how they kind of show them. Really did great detail in the agenda finale for the second season. And I like how they zoomed in on one part when Megatron's flying across the stasis locked Transformers, all the Decepticons and Autobots that are in stasis lock. I like how they kind of zoom in on Starscream's face a little bit. Kind of makes you think, what's going on here? But anyways, it was really cool to see, and I liked also how they incorporated Ravage of all characters into the series by giving the explanation that after the Great War, he, along with several other